Welcome to Vitamin OC. I'm Joanna Weiss.
And I'm Whitney Gomez. Every week we bring you your recommended dose of civics and civilization in Orange County. And this week we're going to talk about something going on in Orange County that a lot of us don't think about immediately. Most of us think of Orange County as endless beaches, beautiful neighborhoods, good schools, and prosperity. But there's something else going on beneath the surface. Lots of people finding it difficult to find housing, children going to school after sleeping on someone's couch or in a car. And we're going to dig down into the topic of homelessness in Orange County with our guest today.
We are so excited to speak with Jennifer Friend-Smith, CEO of Project Hope Alliance, an organization willing to break the cycle of homelessness through education, trusted relationships, and long-term support. Jennifer's connection to this issue is deeply personal as well. She experienced homelessness herself as a child growing up in Orange County. We'll talk to Jennifer about the realities of living as a homeless person in Orange County, the impact it has on children and students, and the innovative approach that Project Hope Alliance is taking to help young people not just survive, but thrive.
Before we dig in, I want to go through a couple of the national and local awards that you and Project Hope Alliance have won recently. They're quite substantial, so congratulations. From Bank of America, you have been awarded the Neighborhood Builders Award, $200,000 in funding and leadership training. From the Youth Homelessness Grant, $750,000. This was a national grant to develop a program for youth ages 18 to 24, which is really my favorite age group. A 3-year, $2.1 million Cal Optima grant to transform care for students experiencing homelessness in Orange County. The Chick-fil-A True Inspiration Award. You were recognized as a woman of distinction by Senator Stephen Choi, and you were Orange County Business Journal's Innovator of the Year in 2023. What a great amount of success. Congratulations.
Thank you. I mean, as you said, that really is reflective of the Project Hope Alliance team. I have to say that I am humbled and honored every day to be able to work alongside these exceptional humans who show up with dedication, courage, skill, and just a profound amount of love for our kids and youth that we serve. So I just get to be the one that stands up there and smiles awkwardly. Although I will say that the Innovator of the Year award was very meaningful for us because it was the first time that it was ever given by the Orange County Business Journal to a nonprofit, which is absolutely mind-blowing because I don't know who needs to be more innovative than a nonprofit in order to move a mission forward. Yeah, that were your team.
Wonderful. Sounds like a good leader talking.
Exactly. So in 2013, you left your law firm as a partner to begin to lead Project Hope Alliance. Can you tell us a little bit about what led to that decision?
Yeah, it definitely was not a traditional career pathway. Since I was in 7th grade, had decided that I was going to become a lawyer because my dad used to say I needed a job that paid by the word. And I knew that growing up in such financial instability that as a woman, I wanted to be in a position to be able to buy a home, take care of any future children I would have, and also not experience financial instability or certainly homelessness during my life. So I went to community college and then transferred to UCI and then went on to law school and then became a civil litigator and became a partner at Selman Brightman in its Orange County office. And during that time, one of my brothers came to me and said, "Hey, I want you to watch this documentary called The Motel Kids of Orange County." And so it was something that was done on HBO, and it was about this one school that was in Orange that served exclusively students experiencing homelessness. They had anywhere from between 35 to probably on the most populated day, 60 students. And the Project Hope School Foundation was this group of wonderful humans who went to the First Presbyterian Church in Orange, and they raised money to pay for busing. for kids from different shelters and motels to this one particular school. So I watched the documentary, and my brother and I decided to crash a board meeting. And so we went to the board meeting, and I shared that my brother, and actually I have 3 brothers, my brothers and I had experienced homelessness in Orange County, being evicted starting when I was in 6th grade, living in a 6-bedroom house on East Oceanfront, attending Newport L, and then lived in motels, slept on the floors of friends from church, experienced couch surfing, all of those things really through and until I had my own apartment in my 20s. And so I shared that with the board. And then this one gentleman who was the chair of the board said, "Oh, hey, don't we need a secretary? All in favor of Jennifer Friend being our next secretary, please raise your hand." And before I knew it, I walked out of the board meeting secretary of the board, which was not my plan. So I started becoming involved in Project Hope School Foundation, and Hayes Drumright, who was the chair of the board at the time, and I really started talking about how can we make transformational impact. My brothers and I had all seen how education was really that disruptor of poverty and homelessness within our lives. And so how did we extend and extrapolate what we had learned in our lived experience to be able to apply it to kids experiencing homelessness in our community? And so we decided that we wanted to hire our first CEO. At the time, we had one employee, and she was acting a lot in the role of school administrator, trying to facilitate resources. And we were thinking, how do we create a vision that not only can lead our community, but can actually lead the nation on how to end generational homelessness by working with our kids? So we formed a search committee, chaired the search committee. We hired a consultant. On the first day of the search committee, a girlfriend of mine said, "Is someone going to say the elephant in the room?" And I was like, "What is that?" And she said, "We want you to be the CEO." Well, I laughed at that. Not because I didn't think it was an incredibly important role, but because I knew that was a 75% pay cut. I had my own mortgage, right, that I needed to pay, and 2 kids. And then I was sitting in church at St. Andrew's, and Kelly Comwisher, who was the wife of our pastor at the time, gave a sermon on Esther and was talking about how God does not call the equipped, he equips the called. And she was talking about how Esther lived in these 2 worlds. She had this duplicity about her. She was Jewish, and then she was the queen. So she could navigate, or we kind of talk about code switching sometimes, right, in society. She could navigate both of these worlds, comfortable in them. And I kind of sat there and I thought about, I had lived at the Tropic Motel, slept on the floor of people's homes, couldn't wash my clothes, or I washed my clothes in the bathtub and they smelled moldy when I would go to school the next day. And I was a partner at a law firm. I grew up in Newport Beach and Huntington Beach. I could walk into a CEO's office and not feel intimidated. And I felt that I was able to articulate an argument from my training as a trial lawyer. And that was kind of unique. And while I didn't know what the heck it would look like to be the CEO of a nonprofit or build a nonprofit, it was very clear that that was what my life purpose was. So I went home and told my husband that God wanted me to quit my job and be the CEO of Project Hope, to which he practically and rightfully said, "How much does that pay?" And I told him, and he was like, "That's a 75% pay cut. So I don't really think that's going to work out from a budget perspective."
Was he at the sermon?
He was not.
Okay.
Yeah. And so I was, and I was bringing the spiritual dynamic to it from like kind of on my own. And so I said, "Well, I really have to do this." And he was like, "I don't see how we can make this work." Well, a couple weeks later, he came back and said, "I did the math. If we have to, we could live on credit for a year. So let's give it a year." And that was 13 years ago. And I will forever be profoundly grateful to my husband for taking that leap of faith, because I think for him, that was an even bigger leap of faith than it was for me. And I think that we got to parent in a way that honors both of our values that we might not have gotten to parent. And I think as a couple, it really showed that it's a partnership, which is really special. So 30 years into the marriage thing, I'm really grateful for it. Yeah.
Amazing. Good husband.
Yeah.
He is a good husband.
If I'm not mistaken, you were the impetus behind building the replica of the motel room. And I think it's 214 square feet.
Yes.
It was at Harbor Day School in the gym many
Yes.
years ago. And I walked through it and it was so incredibly powerful. And I think I saw it at the Second Harvest
Right.
also. And it's been around. Can you talk to us about your brainstorm of doing that and why it was meaningful for you to create that?
Yeah. So, I was a trial lawyer. So when I was sitting on the board, I kept trying to articulate to people what homelessness and thank you so much for bringing the subject forward to your viewers because it is invisible in our community. And people know of the person that's holding the sign, maybe at the end of the freeway, the individual, there's kind of a demographic, maybe white male, roughly in his 30s. People, project substance abuse and mental health kind of on to that picture of what we view homelessness as. But yet I knew that in Orange County, our public school system has identified over 34,000 students experiencing homelessness attending our K through 12th grade public school system. And I was trying to articulate, whether it be at a cocktail party or even to like a friend or a peer, what homelessness looks like. And I thought, well, my family, when we lived at the Tropic Motel, we were homeless under the McKinney-Vento Act, which is the piece of federal legislation that defines homelessness for children and youth up to age 18. It rightfully includes motels, shelters, sleeping in your car, couch surfing, which is what homelessness looks like in Orange County. So I called up at the time, and I didn't know him, the dean of the Claire Trevor School of the Arts at UCI, and I said, I have this crazy idea. I said, I had this conversation with my husband about how do we let people know what homelessness looks like. And I think in an act of desperation, I was like talking to my husband about, motels, it looks like that. And he just wanted to go to sleep because it was like 2 o'clock in the morning. And he said, why don't you just build a motel room? And I was like, yes. So UCI loaned us the head of scenic design at the Claire Trevor School of the Arts and an anthropologist. And we built a replica based on the motel room that my family of 6 lived in for a year. And at that time when it was built, I contacted a reporter from the Orange County Register because we wanted to do a story on the intersectionality between the nonprofit, the university, and then my brother's company that paid the cost to build this thing. Instead, what ended up happening was I told my story for the first time, and it ended up on the front page of the Register. And that kind of set like the course that I already shared kind of into motion. But that is powerful because it allows for us to enter the world of a family experiencing homelessness. And you look around it, and she's been decommissioned, unfortunately. It had been moved so many times, the poor
I was
thing.
wondering how you did that.
Well, we did it with a lot of liability insurance because we had to use volunteers to like take it apart, put it together. But it was not built to be taken apart and put together as many times as it was. And so it ultimately, but so we're looking to build a new one actually. But something that's great about art is it allows for us each to experience it as we're able. And we took it to a lot of corporate campuses around Orange County. And I'll never forget this one time when this gentleman walked through it and he paused and he stood at the foot of the bed and he looked where there were like school books and pencils. And then he went into what was the bathroom.
Yeah,
like
I'm going to start crying. I remember walking through this.
and
I'm a crier, Joanna knows.
no, but that's,
that's what you were trying to do.
That's
Yeah.
the power of art to be able to communicate things. And he walked out and he stood behind it and tears were running down his eyes. And I went over and I kind of just like quietly stood next to him. And then he said, I studied AP physics in the bathtub at the motel where my family, when we came from Ethiopia, there were 7 of us and we lived in a motel room and the only place with a door was the bathroom. And we just hugged each other, understanding what that looked like. And he said, I have 2 doctorates now in science. He said, and I hadn't visited this part of myself. And I'm so proud of myself. And that's also the power in it. Is I watched some women who had fled domestic violence situations. And they walked through it and they remembered the courage that it had taken them to move their families from a middle class neighborhood where they had security to a motel room and try to navigate, is social services going to show up? Where do I cook? So you have a crock pot or you have a hot plate, and then you don't have a refrigerator. So you have an ice chest, right? You have your igloo ice chest. And the profound privilege I've had of being able to share space and experiences with people has been very healing for me. And I've watched people like yourself who may not have experienced that firsthand come to such a deep emotional place of connection that it changes our community. And I know it's changing the lives of our kids who aren't experiencing homelessness today in the way that they show up for their peers. And I just think that the more that we can be invited into one another's lives in a way that honors the person who has gone through the trauma, the better off we all are, because everyone has some kind of a story. And with homelessness, and particularly student homelessness, it's invisible a lot of times on purpose. I went to Huntington Beach High School, and we moved when we were first evicted from our house on East Oceanfront. We moved to Huntington and we lived in Seacliff, and then we lived in motels. So we weren't telling anyone where we were sleeping at night. My freshman year of high school, my bedroom was literally a closet, and it was very exciting because there was a door. And at the time, you think that those moments define who you are. And at a time when you're just trying to stay below the radar as a teenager, you're trying to fit in, you're trying to discover who you are, the last thing you want is for people to know that you're living in a motel. So that drives the invisibility. Matched with tremendous affluence requires a large service community, right? And people want their kids to go to good schools. And moms need to live near where their kids are going to school and where they're working. So you'll have 3 families that are not related at all renting a 1-bedroom apartment. And we have some of our kids are living in housing situations where there's 17 people and they're not related to them.
Wow.
And you can imagine if you're a 15-year-old girl living with men that are not related to you. I mean, there's a lot of, but that moment to build something that was a demonstrative exhibit, to use like lawyer
Incredible.
words, but we only do that in community. We needed the community to come together to build that art piece. And then later, stemming from those things, there actually was a play that was off Broadway that was written called Nomad Motel that was on the front page of the New York Times, that came out of my story and came out of that. And so then it was on stage.
Oh, great.
And that was wild as heck.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
Totally imagine. So you mentioned before what a typical person thinks of with homelessness. And our first season on Vitamin OC, we interviewed Michael Sean Wright, who is the executive director and founder of Wound Walk OC. And they often deal with that picture that you were painting of a single person, often male. But we know homelessness does involve children. And I think not to the extent that you mentioned 34,000. I think from the point in time counts, I think we're thinking it's more like in the thousands or like 1,000. So it's a staggering number that are experiencing homelessness. Can you tell us a little bit about how those children are living and what their day-to-day looks like?
Yeah. And actually, I'm grateful that you brought up the point in time count, because one of the greatest challenges is that in the United States, we currently operate under 2 different definitions of homelessness, depending upon your age. So the McKinney-Vento definition, which is what drives children up to age 18, is what I shared, which includes living in a motel that is something that is being paid for by others, or you're paying for yourself because you can't afford adequate housing, and couch surfing. The point in time count only counts people who are literally sleeping on the street unsheltered.
Okay. Right.
And if you are a family, you are not going to be somewhere that is visible enough to be counted in the point in time count. So we actually have far more children that are sleeping unhoused, like literally on the streets and in cars than are counted in the point in time count. So the disparity between those numbers also prevents us from putting together the resources that we actually need, because what it looks like for children is it looks like going to school in Huntington Beach and then driving to Stanton or Garden Grove to your motel room at night. It means that your family maybe doesn't own a car, so you're waking up at 4 a.m. We have kids who are living in garages in Anaheim that are waking up at 4 a.m. to take 3 buses to go to Costa Mesa High School. My brothers and I would stay at the city gym until it closed in Huntington Beach because my family only had enough gas money to go from our motel to drop us off at school, to drop my mom off at work, to then pick my mom up from work, and then pick us up and go back. That means you can't participate in things like athletics, the school play, those types of things. It also looks like not knowing which friend you're going to be able to stay at their house that evening and carrying around your things in your backpack. So a lot of our kids have everything that matters to them in their backpack. But what if you had your backpack at maybe your dad's friend's house, but you don't go back to your dad's friend's house? Now you don't have your books, you don't have your clothes, you don't have the things that you need to show up well in school. We have kids who are sleeping in cars. That has definitely increased. The number of families that are now living in their car has increased dramatically since COVID. So you have kids that are going to the Bob Henry Park to wash their face and brush their teeth and change their clothes before they go to school. It really looks like all of that. And it looks like parents working 2 full-time jobs to be able to figure out how to just feed their kids and maybe pay for a spot on the floor for them to sleep at night. And our kids are 87% more likely to drop out of high school, but yet not having a high school diploma is the number one leading indicator of being homeless as an adult. So our kids at Project Hope Alliance who have a 94% high school graduation rate, each one of them is already off the bat 400% less likely to experience homelessness as an adult. But it's really, I think the thing that as a mom of 2 kids, that drives me so hard to get the resources our kids need is remembering what it felt like for me to make the school play and then my parents having to tell me that I couldn't do it because we didn't have enough gas money for me to get to and from the rehearsals. And then having the internal conversation, why should I just try? What's the point of trying? I can do my part, but the resources that are outside of my external control are not there. So why should I try? So the fact that a Project Hope Alliance case manager is embedded with their own offices and all the resources to show up for the kids every day when they do try so that they can realize their dreams, that's like everything to me.
Talk to us more about that, because that's a really unique element of your program, is that there are case managers in the schools that the kids can go to. So how are they helping them? What resources are they providing? How does it all work?
Yeah, that's really like the secret sauce or the magic of it, right? Is placing a designated, stable, trusted adult embedded within the kid's own environment to show up for them every day. So what it looks like is, so our very first campus was Newport Harbor High School. And the thing, like, I got pushback rightfully from everyone from friends, colleagues to actually Project Hope team members, because they were like, I just looked up on Zillow how much that house is for sale for, right across the street. What are we doing here? And I said, just wait. You'll find out that there is a huge dearth of resources and there are kids all around us experiencing homelessness.
Wow.
So what it looked like was Principal Bolton gave us our own room, and he gave us a room that actually also has a bathroom, a private bathroom. There's no signage on the outside of the door that says who's in there. So Angela shows up every day before school starts, and she's there after school's over, sitting in the office so that if, let's say, Miss Adams notices that a student is consistently coming to school in the same clothes, seems a bit disheveled, seems a bit off, but isn't sure what's going on in that student's life, Miss Adams will say, hey, Janie, it seems like something might be going on. And, Angela, who's part of our student support team, is right over in room 111. I'm going to give you a hall pass. Why don't you go down and just check in with Angela and see if there's anything that she can do to support you? Angela and each case manager only has a caseload of 30 students because we stay with those students till they're 24. We're really focused on the generational disruption. So Angela will say, Miss Adams told me that there might be something going on. Like, do you want to talk about it? And in a trauma-informed way, we'll start a conversation, ultimately revealing to the student who she is, why we're there, and how we can support. And actually, our Youth Advisory Council, made up of our students, we have 9 of our students that serve on the Youth Advisory Council, came up with a brochure to describe our services in a student-informed way for us to give to the student.
Great.
It's really cool. And so then we really just do life with them. Everything from making sure they have tutoring to clothes to food to transportation to the school play rehearsals. We have football players, lacrosse players. We have just amazing youth doing everything from winning. One of our youth won Orange County Artist of the Year a couple of years ago. Yeah, so right now is an exciting time because it's graduation. We have the largest graduating class we've ever had. We have kids going off to UC San Diego, UCLA. I mean, just getting the Edison full STEM scholarships. One of our girls got a $50,000 scholarship for science. She's a double science major at UC San Diego.
Jeez, amazing.
That's really
These
exciting.
kids, who would not want to invest in these kids? They're the ones who are going to change the world because they've already been tested and they've already been proven. And they have as parents, we're always thinking about how do we create grit? These kids not only have it, but they know how to harness it.
Clearly.
Hopefully, some of the affordable housing initiatives that have been developing affect the issue of homelessness here in Orange County. By 2031, local governments are required to build 2.5 million new homes, 1 million of which must be designated for lower income households. How much of the issue of homelessness do you think is kind of a supply and demand issue? What are some of the more complicated issues that are contributors to this problem?
All of the issues are complicated. That's one of the greatest challenges. We just spent $24 billion in the state of California to address homelessness, and the rates have gone up. And I think that that's indicative of a couple of things. One of them is allowing for the invisibility of the next generation responding to a problem as opposed to preventing it. One of the things that is not understood, I think, especially in Orange County, that drives family homelessness and child and youth homelessness is how undereducation impedes someone's ability to make a livable wage. We make a lot of assumptions, and they're not ill-placed assumptions. Just we can't imagine someone not having the opportunity. We've made community colleges free. We think, but then if you think about it, I started working at the age of 12 to help not save money to buy a new bike or go to Disneyland, but so we could buy food. That's the same with our kids, right? So if our kids at Project Hope Alliance feel a familial responsibility to be financially contributing the second that they can actually financially contribute, it almost seems to be a luxury to have a dream to go to college and try to get whether it's skill-based training or an educational foundation to be able to make a higher wage. And so we make a lot of assumptions around what true barriers are to a living wage. And we also think that everyone can just move further away where the rent is cheaper. But again, if you don't have a car and you have a family, how are you going to live in Riverside and care for someone's children in Newport Beach? What time would you have to wake up to take a bus? And who's getting your kids ready for school? So one of the challenges, and I'm hoping there's definitely a shift in policy and conversation right now around family homelessness, even in the affordable housing space, which is very positive. I would say that for the last 13 years, the hardest fight that I've had to fight was lifting the invisibility of childhood and youth homelessness in Orange County, because that number is so wild. Like, when you have a point in time count number that says 1,000, but then it's not us saying 34,000. It's literally the Orange County Department of Ed. So if you Google how many students experiencing homelessness are in Orange County's public school, that's where the 32 to 34,000 number comes up. It's not my number. In the nation, it's 1.6 million. In the state of California, we have enough students experiencing homelessness to fill Dodger Stadium. But yet, where are conversations around ensuring that they can graduate high school?
You had mentioned how important graduation from high school is. Can you talk to us why that is? Is it job opportunities, or what is it about the high school graduation?
I think it's a couple of things. So, one, Project Hope Alliance is not making our kids smarter. Let's just like lay that out right there. Our kids come to us and they're already smart, scrappy. What we believe, and actually we have data that is completely confirming it because we have a tool that we utilize to do assessments quarterly, is that the social emotional health of our students, from creating a sense of belonging and connection to their school environment, is what is having a direct correlation to the increased high school graduation rate. There are also some practical parts, right? So we do ensure they have tutoring. We do ensure that if they need a 504, they're getting a 504. We're showing up at parent-teacher conferences if the parents can't show up, and we're having conversations with the teachers in real time as well as the school counselors about what barriers there are to the kids, graduating or passing a class. So there are a lot of variables, but ultimately what our students tell us is that I wanted so deeply to be connected and feel a part of my school, but I always felt like I was on the outside. I don't feel like I'm on the outside anymore. And that makes them that internal narrative I had in 7th grade where I was like, why should I try? That lets them know that if they try, there's someone there to make sure that they can do the thing that they're trying for. So that sense of connectedness and belonging is really, really powerful. I mean, as moms, we can see that, right? And also it does matter. Like if our student is failing chemistry, we need to get a tutor so that they can pass chemistry. And lots of times the reason why they're not doing well is because they don't have enough consistency to be able to show up academically. They can't print something out. They maybe don't have reliable Wi-Fi. So eliminating those types of barriers matter, but I really want to give credit to where credit is due, and it's our kids. So when we show up for our kids, they show up for themselves. And that stable, trusted adult that journeys with them consistently, that makes all the difference in the world. And we see that in data. Like that's been the story that's been being told with respect to youth consistently, whether you're looking at Big Brothers Big Sisters data, Boys and Girls Club data. We know that a stable, trusted adult in the life of a child makes all the difference. That's why when people are getting Academy Awards, they'll like say to their mom, or they'll talk about a teacher or a coach. So that really is. And so us having and being embedded where the kids are, often we build systems in spite of the people who need to utilize them. And we put I think sometimes our government in the center of the circle. We put ourselves in the center of the circle, right? What's easiest for us? What's most efficient for us? And we're not actually even asking, like, what do the people who are using the services need? Or how can the people who are using the services access them? Our kids at Project Hope Alliance don't have agency. They can't drive somewhere to go to an after-school program. So when we plug into where they already are and we're part of their ecosystem, they know they have a buddy. And you know what? If Sally doesn't show up and say hi to Angela on Monday morning, then Angela's like, hey, Sally, didn't see you this morning. Where are you? And just that sense of knowing that someone is looking at you and you're
Absolutely.
seen, it's the difference maker.
It's the support, but I think it's also the accountability.
Yep.
It's also bringing the report card to show it to someone.
That's right. Yeah. And celebrating the
Yeah,
wins.
absolutely.
Right? Because then you have someone, when you're proud of yourself, you have someone to share that with. And it makes all the difference. And our kids want to be held accountable. And it's not because their parents don't care about their education. Their parents are working 2 jobs.
Absolutely.
I don't know how in the world I was thinking about my mom and everything that she and my dad went through, and the fact that all 4 of us went to college, all 4 of us own homes. I mean, in one generation, but that was because even in the midst of all of it, we were very blessed that our parents saw us and were checking in with us. But it's not a moral failure on someone's part who is so exhausted and is in total crisis mode. They love their kids just as much as the 3 of us love our kids, right?
You mentioned agency. And as I understand it from, child psychology onto my own experiences with my own kids, agency and dignity are very important to kids. You have developed a program where the theme is their voice, their choice. Can you talk a little bit about how that plays out within your organization and where that slogan came from?
Yeah, so again, that was the amazing team. So our director of programs, Lucia Nguyen, has really been driving that home and embedding it in our culture and naming it in a new, powerful way. It's always existed. So I was kind of talking about that circle, right? At Project Hope Alliance, our kids are at the center of the circle. If it's not good for them, we don't do it. And we're not looking to grow because Project Hope Alliance wants to be big. It's for our kids. And a lot of our youth feel othered just by being. So acknowledging your voice, your choice, acknowledges that they're not othered, that they're them. And it also reminds them, and this is one of the things that I tell our youth, especially our youth that are in high school, around the age of our sons, like 16, that age, it's not always going to look like this. You just need to hold on till you can get to the other side. And so calling out your voice, your choice names that they have a voice and they do have a choice. They may not have the agency right now to control their housing status or their familial status, but they do have the choice to show up in school. They do have the choice to dream. They do have the choice to hope, and that their voice actually can drive conversations and make change in a powerful way. And being reminded that you're not othered, you actually are just in yourself, I think is something that is transformational in the minds and hearts of our kids.
We talked a little bit about the grant that you earned for the 18 to 24 cohort. Talk to us about what you're doing with that group of kids and what kind of special support do they need?
Yeah, so I have a daughter who's graduating college in just a couple of weeks, and I know that the things that she needed when she graduated high school were very different than the things that my son in high school right now needs. And so it may look like, and just to let you know, the way that it works is we're not grabbing like new kids in that 18 to 24 cohort. It's our kids that are graduating this June will then go and have a transitional age youth case manager. And so a lot of the work that we do are things like taking them to get a driver's license, right? They need a car to get a driver's license in. Now that they're 18, they don't have to have the mandatory classwork. So they're able, because that's an economic barrier to them. So now they're able to do that. So it could look like that. It could look like facilitating that. But it's looking a lot like, okay, so I got into UC San Diego. What the heck do I do now? Okay, well, you're going to move into a dorm. So let's help navigate that, right? And what do you need when you go into a dorm? You need bedding. You need all of the things that you need to care for yourself. Let's go out and let's pick those things out. Oh, you are interested in the military. Well, if you want, I'll drive you and we can go meet someone at, the Army office. And sitting with them through those meetings so that they have someone to talk through their options with. It looks like that. It also looks like a lot of our youth are moving into their first stable housing because now they're adults. So they do have agency. They didn't have it before, but they hung in there and they did the hard work. And now they actually can rent an apartment. So we're helping them navigate those relationships with landlords, letting landlords know, okay, so they might not have credit, but we're an organization that's staying with them till they're 24. And we're telling you, here's their pay stub, here's their job. We'll give you a letter of recommendation, helping them navigate actually being stably housed for the first time. And then what's really cool is we just had a couple that are 25, like some of our youth that one bought a house and has a baby, he and his wife, and he's a small business owner.
Wow.
This
What a story.
and we get the joy of actually seeing what this looks like all the way to fruition. But it looks like a lot of different things. And for some of our youth, some of the big things start coming off the shelves for them when they get older and they're ready to go into therapy. They're ready to kind of look at the bigger emotional impacts of the financial situations and the traumas that they've been through. And so helping support that, making sure that, we're paying for therapy or we're facilitating getting them into therapy, those types of things.
Wonderful.
It's good stuff.
It's good stuff.
You've imparted so much wisdom to our listeners already about homelessness and families in Orange County. If there's one more piece of information or advice on how you wish Orange County residents would look at either homelessness or be involved, what would you recommend?
I would recommend that we start seeing our kids and start being a voice for them. We have the ability to drive policy. We have the ability to impact our elected officials. We also have the opportunity to share with our own kids. Hey, if you see someone that's sitting by themselves and they don't have a lunch and you notice that they haven't really had a lunch, and I know we have free lunches, but there's also stigma associated, like it's complicated, back to your earlier point. We can start imparting knowledgeable empathy onto our own children because kids get it. When we become grown-ups, it's kind of when we mess it up because we bring so much of our own judgment into the conversation that sometimes it's hard to discern between what's factual and what's kind of judgy, honestly. So I would say see our kids and be a voice for them, because now is the time to stand up and effectuate change, because we do not want to lose out on the 34,000 incredible individuals that are going to lead forward this next generation.
Well, wow, this was quite a conversation. Thank you for making time for us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for the opportunity.
I admire your stepping away from your law career to do this, and you're having such an impact, and we really deeply admire what you're doing. So thanks for talking to us.
Yeah, thanks for advocating for the vulnerable and being there for the kids and the students. And can't thank you enough for being with us today. And to our listeners, thank you for joining us for your recommended dose of civics and civilization in Orange County.
We'll see you next time on Vitamin OC.